Hi, this is Dave. I want to talk about transforming your sales force by creating specific expectations. So, I just finished a phone call with a potential client who had called to discuss a problem. Here was this problem. He had an 18-person sales force that was paid 100% straight commission. All of the salespeople had been with the company for anywhere from 8 to 15 years, and they were all earning substantial incomes. His problem was that he could not get them to do what he wanted them to do. Here's the example he shared. He wanted the salespeople to call in new prospects in order to expand the company's base. So instead of just seeing established customers, he asked them to call in prospects and report back to them on the progress they were making. Sounds reasonable. But there were almost no results. Instead, he got comments like, "I'm not going to do this. I'm not a new salesperson," or "That's just more paperwork." Just a lot of excuses. And the list of excuses could go on, but basically the salespeople resented being asked to do something that they saw as outside of their responsibilities. And the manager was extremely frustrated. He was paying him to get the easy sale. He's asking him to get a harder sale, and they were pushing back. This is a classic example of a common chronic malady I call a lack of, quote, directability. A lack of directability. Here, the problem is that management has not cleared up this murky difference of opinion. It may be, of course, that the salespeople choose to ignore management's direction. Now, that's a different but associated problem. It really doesn't come into play until the expectations are made clear. Here's an example. Like a number of years ago, one of my clients moved his company into a CRM system. And in this particular case, he gave the salespeople 6 months to learn to type, offered to pay for a typing class for them, mandated that on a date, approximately 6 months from now, the company would totally implement the CRM system. And that meant that every salesperson would be expected to use it to record sales calls, customer information, all the typical CRM stuff. The expectations were perfectly clear. At the end of the 6 months, 3 of the 6 salespeople had not improved their typing skills. When asked about the use of the system, they responded, "Well, we're salespeople, not clerks. We're paid to sell, not enter information." In this case, the expectations were clear, but the salespeople held on to an outmoded definition of their jobs. The company's course of action was clear, and those salespeople were replaced. Now, while there are a number of things that should be done to cure this disease of non-directability, they begin with an often overlooked initiative, and that is creating a set of clear expectations for the job of the salesperson. The issue of undirectability has at its heart a difference of opinion as to what the salesperson should do. The salespeople believe that taking care of their current customers and being rewarded by a portion of the gross profit is the total extent of their responsibilities. Management believes otherwise. The difference in these basic expectations generates conflict and resentment and frustration almost daily. This negative condition leads, of course, to dismal productivity. Sales manager continually squanders his time in the dubious effort of trying to shape the behavior of the salespeople. The salespeople focus on doing exactly the opposite of what management asks so that they can build their case and prove their point. While there is another longer range and more sinister impact, the company caught in this kind of malaise has virtually no ability to implement any strategic initiative. That's huge. So, for example, let's say companies decided to take on a new product line. Management sees this new line as holding excellent future potential to grow into a category that is at the moment a minor piece of their business. As management looks ahead, they see this category growing, and they want to use this line to position the company in this promising segment. So management makes a commitment to the new line, buys the beginning inventory, loads the SKUs into the computer, works out the pricing columns, posts the products on its website, and educates the customer service department. One last but essential piece remains, that is to harness the power of the sales force to generate business. And you know what happens. Management calls the sales force together, brings in the manufacturer's rep, introduces the new strategic initiative. At the end of the day, the sales manager announces that because of the importance of this line of the company's future, every salesperson should introduce it in every one of his good accounts in the next 30 days. Salesforce nods gravely and then goes out and does whatever they've been doing for the last few years. At the end of 30 days, virtually nothing has been done. Does that sound familiar? I've sketched this scenario to thousands of principals and sales leaders at annual meetings and national conventions, and then I ask the question, if you were in this situation, what would be the likelihood that every one of your salespeople would do what you ask them to do? Let me repeat that. It's an important question. If you were in this situation, what would be the likelihood that every one of your salespeople would do what you directed them to do? Well, typically the response is dismal. How about you? Take a moment and reflect on the state of directability of your sales force. Is your sales force directable? Now consider the implications. If you cannot implement a strategic initiative like this, what does that say for the future of your business? Do you even have a future? So you can see why I am so adamant on the importance of a directable sales force. It's one of the most valuable assets you can have. It's almost to the point that your company's future may well depend on it. Now, there are a number of causes of this situation. For example, 100% commission compensation plans causes that situation. Salespeople who have been around a long time, set in their ways, that's another issue. Salespeople who are highly paid, more highly paid than their productivity warrants, is an issue. A corporate culture that promotes the idea that every salesperson has, quote, his own business, that's a contributor to the situation as well. But the cure is to address each of these, making changes that I recommend in my book, Transforming Your Sales Force for the 21st Century. But before you do that, you need to attend to the first step, and that is creating and communicating a precise set of expectations to the sales force that describes their jobs and what you expect them to do. Once you have done that, you will have laid the groundwork for the changes that should follow. The point is this: it is difficult to create change in the behavior of a salesperson in the absence of a clear set of expectations. That document is not a guarantee that the salesperson will change, but it is necessary to direct the process. It's necessary, but not sufficient. It's the first step. So how do you create that specific set of expectations? Well, I recommend you starting at the end. What are you going to end up with? There's room for lots of variations in the format and the formula. I like to see something like this. One side of one piece of paper on which you spell out the following things. Number one, an overview of the job. Number two, the 5 most important activities for success in the job. Number 3, the definition of how success is measured. Number 4, to whom the salespeople report. Number 5, what sort of attitude you expect. The question then becomes, how do you get to that point where you have these questions answered in writing? It's got to be in writing because that makes it specific. Again, there are multiple paths to getting to that point. You may want to draft it yourself, or you can do it in conjunction with a group of key executives. You may want to even have a task force and give it to them. Should you involve the sales force? Well, I'm ambivalent. On one side, I'm a little hesitant to advocate that you ask the sales force or that you add a salesperson to the task force, because unless that person you involved is especially mature, the likelihood is that salespeople will input in ways that are in their own personal self-interest, not necessarily the good of the company. This is especially true if they're 100% commissioned. On the other hand, I've seen clients who have involved a mature salesperson with good results. So, should you involve the salesperson? It's up to you. Regardless, at some point, you will come to a document, and then you need to communicate that. So you need to communicate that document, and of course that calls for a sales meeting with all the key players in attendance. I think it's important that the CEO be involved to lend credibility and authority to the proceedings. Salespeople must understand there's no opportunity for an appeal to a higher source. There's no negotiation on your expectations. And it's always a good idea to give the whys of the expectations, particularly if they represent a major shift from current practice. It's also a good idea to encourage dialogue and discussion. Use the meeting as an opportunity to encourage people to mentally process the information. There is a line, however, between discussion and negotiation. And frankly, I take a hard line on this issue. I really don't think it's up to salespeople to tell you what they should do. Honestly, I think that's management's job. You don't allow your customer service person to explain that they don't think they ought to answer phones, nor do you expect your warehouse foreman to refuse to take inventory. It's just like, it's your job. Now, there's plenty of room for salespeople to define the hows of their job, but the whats are the province of management. So what's next? Okay, a written set of expectations, clearly communicated, won't by itself make transformational changes in many salespeople. A few may have an aha insight, but it'll take more than just this to power the change you want. However, the expectations are necessary to set up the changes to come. It's sort of like outfitting a sailboat. You need to put the mast in place. A mast by itself without a sail or a rudder or a keel will do absolutely nothing to move the sailboat. But you can't hoist the sail until you first fix the mast. So it is with a written, communicated set of expectations. It is necessary, but not sufficient step in the process of transforming your sales force. By the way, if you are really truly interested in transforming your sales force, you should check out our XI community. XI stands for Excellence and Influence. It's an online community, and we have a group specifically focused on sales managers and sales leaders. So in the community, you can address these issues, see these issues addressed, and lots of blog posts and podcasts and so on. You can engage with other sales leaders and sales managers. You can engage with our content. Lots of content for sales managers and sales leaders. Actually, I don't know of any place like it. And it's incredibly expensive. It costs you $5 a month. So I'll put a link in the show notes, and please check out the XI community, the sales managers group in the XI community. Okay, that's it. We're done. Bye-bye.